Social networking. We haven't talked a lot about that, but I'm of the view that the social networking phenomenon is one of the most significant internet breakthroughs of all time. How many people have a Facebook page? Quite a lot more than you would have a year ago. How many of their kids have a Facebook page? So we think these things are kind of like toys. They're just like teenage hangouts. Let me divert for a second. Everybody pick up their glass. Everybody pick up their glass. I want you to toast the conference and turn around and click your glasses. To Digital Pathway. This happens every time I do this. Of course, it's made complicated by the U table, but if we were a round table, what always happens? You can't click everybody else's glass, right? You get this awkward, well, and maybe you, maybe, let me get over to you, and let me get over to you. There's a reason, right? Because there may be 5 people at the table, but there are 10 coordinated pairs of toasts, right? There could be 10 people at the table, right? And that's 45 coordinated pairs of activity. It would take 45 individual connections to actually have everybody toast everybody else. If there were 15, it goes to 105. So what does that mean? It means that as organizations or human activity increases, the complexity of coordinating them increases even more. Right? This is called a problem of coordination costs. And this is what is humankind's response to this problem? They invented the organization. We forget that organizations is an invention. It's an invention. The org chart is invented mostly by the railroad industry to manage southbound and eastbound trains using the same track. What do? We distribute labor, we distribute responsibility, we distribute oversight, we say who gets to report to who, we put it in a nice little org chart, right? And that's how we coordinate. We can't have all of you talking to all of you at the same time. You know this, if I take 3 of us and say, let's go to the movies, what movie you want to see? With 3 people, we might get it right. If I add 7, we can't decide. If I had 20, we might as well go home, because nobody is going to have a consensus. So society built organizations. The great Nobel laureate Coase realized in his paper, The Nature of the Firm, he said, wait a minute, there's a problem with organizations. They cost something. So the more organization you need, the more costly it gets just to manage the organization to handle the coordination cost problem. So what ultimately happens? Things of value don't get produced because they're too expensive to produce. Right? An organization will only produce what it can profitably produce, or what the benefits exceed the costs of producing. But because you have a big organization, if you're at Microsoft, you're at Cisco, you got a whole bunch of people to pay, feed, manage, promote, pay. Social networking comes along, and it's a radical change. Why? Because it radically lowers group coordination costs. And I would submit to you, it's a great invention. In the history of communication, you had 2 kinds of communications forever. You had broadcasting, which is one-to-many, right? And we're all couch potatoes. We passively listen. We don't have interactive activity. That's broadcast. That's radio, television, all of that stuff, right? And then we had communication systems, which were one-to-one. I talk to you, you talk to me, I call you up. Intimate, interactive, that's telephone, telegraph, you name it, the fax machine. What we never had was group to group. There's never been a communication system that allowed groups to coordinate and talk to groups, to share, to coordinate, and to organize collective action. That's what Facebook is. That's why its potential is powerful. This is why if you're running an organization and you want to do it with really low cost, in which you get spontaneous and amazing activity, you use social networks. That's what they figured out. And the magic is, stuff that couldn't be invented by organizations can be invented in the network space. Which is why Flickr can be a better photojournalist site than the New York Times. Well, I'm not going to go on that soapbox anymore, but that is one worth studying and watching, because if you want to talk about a driver, I will predict to you that thing is going to drive more than almost anything else up there on that list. Supply side, just real quickly, we did hear a couple of things. Tom Talkie said large capital expenditures up front is much more the problem than the annual cost of running the network. right? So when we start hearing about universal service reform or something, ask yourself, does that really go to this problem? Right? The ongoing expenses. It is the time for some massive capital X project, more than an annual cost of management issue. So where does that money come from? How is it incented? Who provides it? Does tax policy provide an incentive? Does government expenditure? Do private capital? That's important. I just put regulation to facilitate bill. I don't know what the bevy of those issues are. I've heard them all, poll attachment, zoning, whatever. But clearly, if we want it to go faster, we have to find a way for those issues to go faster. Michigan and some states have been leaders in trying to do that. Adoption, I thought this was a great conversation at this conference too, right? Because the truth is, this is something we don't know quite how to talk about. Broadband passes more homes than we can explain why people don't take it. Right? A lot of people have broadband in their neighborhood and they are not subscribers. They don't yet see the value proposition. They're not yet sufficiently aware of what the benefits are. They don't have the most basic training and support for someone to walk them through getting online. What kind of computer do I need? What does it have to be capable of doing? How do I hook it up? Who do I call to get broadband? What are all these stupid numbers that these techophiles are talking about? 10 megs versus 2 megs. Do you want tier 2 service? They don't know what that means. Is somebody helping them get over the initial hump of adaption and access? No. Geek Squad is an enormously valuable property. We looked at buying it once. Why? Because nobody else was doing this. Nobody comes to your house and helps. You better have a smart grandkid, or you don't get online. We've talked a lot about the older population. I guarantee you, if I map which part of the older population gets online, is the ones with grandkids who come over and say, Grandma, you're a nut. You need to, let me get you hooked up. But if you don't have that, they don't go. So who's going to serve that role?